Welcome back, everyone. It's Epipusa57 here. We are back on Neverwinter on the Xbox One, and today I have my Paladin build for you. This is my own build. This is a Retribution build, as one of my friends nicknamed it. And we'll get right into the meat and potatoes of the build. I do have some work that I have to do as far as getting my Elven Assault gear and making it elemental and everything, but I've got 2130 item level, which is pretty good for a Paladin. So just to show you, I do have a legendary artifact, and we'll go through artifacts and everything in a second. We'll start with your initial stats and your actual race. Preferably on Paladins, human. Human is pretty much the best unless you have metallic ancestral dragonborn. If you don't have that, it's a close tie between human and regular dragonborn. You're going to want to try and roll your stats on your initial roll as high as possible in Constitution, and then relatively even split between Wisdom and Charisma. Now, before I go exactly into all of the stats, I do want to let you know what we're going to accomplish with this build. With this build, our goal is to be a hybrid version, and that's why I went with the Retribution, or meaning Vengeance build, because we want to be able to shield our team, kind of like a perma-bubble pally, but not only just shield. We also want to be able to take a massive amount of damage, and we want to be able to deal a massive amount of damage. So take damage, deal damage, and keep our teammates alive. Now, at the end of this video, I will leave a short game clip from the ending scoreboard that I ran of Epic Lossmouth, and you can see I almost dealt 90 million damage on a straight run through. So back to your initial stats. Now, Constitution, you want as high as possible. And the reason for that is that's your damage resistance and your maximum hit points. Now, with this build, it's actually better to stack as many hit points as possible, because at the very end, once everything is all said and done, every 1,000 hit points equals about 3,000 damage that you can take. It's a little bit weird, but that's just the way that it works. Then I split a little bit more to Wisdom, a little bit less to Charisma. Charisma is very important, but it's mainly your stamina regeneration and your action point gain. Action points are important, but there's so many other ways that we gain our action points in addition to running with a haste cleric that it's not really as necessary as Wisdom is. Wisdom contributes to your bonus healing, your control bonus, your control resist. Control resist is pretty important for a Paladin. Since we have no dodge or sprint ability, we just have to sit there and take the hit. But mainly your critical chance. And the more critical chance that we have, the better, because that is going to allow us to get our temporary hit points. So as you can see with the gear that I have and the ratings that I have about 110,248 hit points. I can get that up with endgame gear and mythic artifacts all the way to about 300,000. So that's going to be the end game. But I wanted to get this build out relatively as soon as possible so that you guys would be able to see it. Now, we're going to go over and take a look at powers. And this is going to be pretty much, as soon as you unlock them, they're going to stay on your powers tray, and you're never going to get rid of them. As left trigger, since this is on the Xbox One, I keep Radiant Strike. This does two things. One, it allows you to charge into combat. So from a short distance, it's kind of like a sprint. It's the closest thing that we have, and it's extremely useful, especially if you have bosses that teleport around. That's the best way to get to them. Also, when you use it, you gain Radiance, which increases your armor penetration and damage by 5% for 15 seconds. So, perfect. More damage, more armor pen equals temporary hit points. Now, you can use one of two things. The highest damaging at will is Oath Strike. The bad thing with it is your teammates do less damage. So that's not really recommended. I like using Shielding Strike. And with Shielding Strike, not only do you do damage, but you also, on the final strike, so it's like a 3-strike combo, and on the final strike you get a shield, and that shield can stack up to 3 times. basically that shield absorbs about 8,000 damage per stack. Now, all these powers that I'm going through, as you get the extra power points, you will want to upgrade to level 4, but we'll go over the first 2 that you're going to do. Now, for dailies, and this is where it's very important, your main daily is Divine Protector. That's going to be the first power that you upgrade to level 4. That's your bubble. And that is how we're able to shield and protect all of our teammates. So kind of like a perma bubble pally, except we're not spec'd completely into action point gain. Our other daily is one of the first dailies that you get, which is Lay on Hands. And the neat thing about this is what most people don't know, you can actually heal yourself with it. So if you take a pretty massive hit and you need to get your HP back, you can use that on yourself, or you can heal teammates with it. Not our primary daily, but a good daily to have. So those are the 2 dailies that I use. Then as soon as you get them unlocked, we'll go over your encounter powers. And these are basically never going to change. Your primary encounter power that you're going to use all the time is Templar's Wrath. This is your main damage encounter power, and this is how you're able to take all the damage that we can tank. Because we're an Oath of Protection build, which is your tank build, on this attack you gain 300% of the damage that you dealt with the attack as temporary hit points. Those temporary hit points do not go away until you either take damage or until you exit combat. If you're completely out of combat, nothing's aggroed on you, those temporary hit points will go away. But you figure 300% of an attack that does about 4,000, 5,000 to 10,000 damage if it crits per target. That's why power and critical chance are important, because that's what gives us the ability to absorb so much damage. Now, where we do damage is Binding Oath. This is going to be the second power that you actually upgrade to level 4. So as soon as you over level 70 one time, put that 4th point into Binding Oath. Now, you'll find that this ability is going to be one that you hate and love at the same time. If you're by yourself and you use Binding Oath, you can control how much damage you take. The way this works is Binding Oath absorbs all the damage. Basically, all targets around you are forced to attack you, and at rank 3, or it lasts for 6 seconds. At rank 4, it lasts for 8 seconds. And all that damage in that, say, at rank 4, 8 seconds, is absorbed. At the end of 8 seconds, Binding Oath will break, and you take 50% of the damage that was absorbed, and deal 20% of all that damage to all the enemies within 30 feet of you. So basically, if you were to absorb, say 1,000,000 damage, when Binding Oath broke, you would take a hit for 500,000 damage. So you can one-shot yourself with this. And if you use Binding Oath in conjunction with Divine Protector, your teammates have to also be a little bit careful about how much damage they take, because you will be taking all the damage. So it's just something that you have to get used to, but Binding Oath is really good with Divine Protector, because Divine Protector already reduces the amount of damage that you take. The last encounter power that we use is Divine Touch, and I always keep that on my B button. As you can see, I have them all slotted, and the reason why I keep it on B is it's the last one that I use. And the thing about this is it does decent damage. It's an AoE attack, so it hits all enemies around you. And what it does is with Oath of Protection, you reduce incoming damage for 8 seconds. Now, you might be thinking that, well, we're already reducing damage with Divine Protector, and we're reducing damage with Binding Oath. The thing of it is, you want to use the Divine Touch about 6 seconds or 4 seconds after you use Binding Oath. And the reason for that is you will take less damage when Binding Oath actually breaks. So very good to have, and kind of keeps you alive. As far as that, next are going to be auras. Now, auras do not stack, so if you run with another paladin, make sure you swap them out. Aura of Radiance is okay, but almost useless. It's good for pulling large groups of enemies towards you, but other than that, not much. Now, if your team is under geared, Aura of Protection is good, You and your allies within 30 feet of you have 5% increased damage resistance. That's pretty good. But the main two that you're going to run with, and pretty much you should have on all the time, are Aura of Courage, because it counts for you and all your allies within 30 feet. Deal 1% of your maximum hit points as bonus damage. And if you upgrade that to rank 3, it boosts it to 21%, and at rank 4, that would be 31%. That's an insane amount of damage when you have 100 to 300,000 hit points. The other one is Aura of Wisdom, because that reduces both you and all allies' recharge speed, so you can get your powers off faster, and that's pretty much it for those. Then we'll go into Feats, which is something that I know you all have been waiting for, because this is where the build is key. Now remember, we said we need hit points, so of course Toughness, this is over in the heroic path. Gotta have it, 3 of 3. That's an extra 9% to your hit points. Weapon Mastery increases your critical strike by up to 3%. Gotta have that, 3 of 3. The more chance you have to crit, the better, the more temporary hit points you get. Then you have Divine Action. Most people spec out of this completely because it's not that much, but when you activate your Divine Call, you generate up to 5% of your max AP. Now, I only spec'd 1 point into that because we don't get Divine Call energy super quickly, but we do get it fairly quickly, so I put 1 point in that. Light Shield, completely useless. Even at 5 points, it only is 2.5% damage resistance. It's not worth it. We're going to cap our damage resistance very soon just with armor and abilities, so don't worry about that. Exemplar's Haste. Your encounter powers recharge up to 6% faster. Well, Binding Oath has a very slow recharge speed in the first place, so you absolutely need to do 3 of 3 on that. Wrathful Strikes. This is where most people put the extra point that I put in Divine Action. Your at-will powers deal up to 6% more damage. Most of our damage does not come from our at-will powers, so I only spec'd in 2 points, so an extra 4% damage. Then Divine Attunement, you receive more healing from spells. We don't really need it. It's not what we do, so 0 of 3. Impassioned Pleas, you regenerate Divine Call energy up to 6% faster. Well, Divine Call is our taunt, so absolutely have to have that, 3 of 3. Dominating Presence, your auras have a increased radius. 30 feet is a pretty big radius. If your teammates aren't within 30 feet, they don't deserve to get the buff from it, so 0 of 5. Now, if you are not human, this will be your last 5 points, which is Steadfast. Each point of Constitution grants you an additional up to 2.5% maximum hit points, 5 of 5 on that. If you are spec'd human, then go ahead and put the remaining 3 points in Force of Will. Each point of Charisma now increases your critical chance by an additional 1%. That's pretty good. And that's where I went because I spec'd human. If you don't want to do completely that and you're low on action point gain, you could split them evenly between Divine Wisdom and Force of Will. But then we get into our Paragon path, which is pretty easy. We're basically going to go the Justice path and 5 of 5 on Swift Flash, because when you are struck by a foe, which we're a tank, so they're all going to be hitting us, you have a chance to trigger Flash, granting you increased movement speed by 30% for 4 seconds. The effect can only occur once every 10 seconds. It's not perfect, but it is helpful for moving in between groups of enemies. Bound by Light, your control strength is increased, completely useless for us, 0 of 5. Second tier on the Justice Paragon. Flash of Light. Your encounter powers have a 25% chance to reduce the cooldown of your nearby allies' encounter powers. Again, that's about 30 feet, and the cooldown reduction is 10%. Now, we get our encounter powers back pretty quickly, so absolutely have to have that, 5 of 5. That's a good team boosting skill. Fury's Reversal is useless. Our HP is pretty much never going to drop below 50%, or we're already dead, so 0 of 5. Radiant Champion, 5 of 5. Your very presence inspires your allies. Now this one isn't good for playing by yourself, but most of the time you're going to be running with teams anyways, so it's perfect. When you have at least 2 other allies within 30 feet of you, all of you gain up to 25% more movement speed and a 5% cooldown reduction bonus. That cooldown reduction bonus does stack with Aura of Wisdom. That's why you want 5 of 5 in that. Steam the Tide while no allies are within 30 feet of you. That's completely ridiculous. You're always going to have somebody within 30 feet of you, so 0 of 5 on that. Next over, you're going to have Echoes of Light. This is a key paragon ability. 5 of 5 in it. Your at-will powers have a 5% chance to trigger Echo on you. Echo makes your next encounter power instantly recharge all of your encounter powers. That you have to have, and we're swinging away pretty fast with our at-wills, so you get Echo pretty frequently while in combat. 5 of 5 on that one. Beacon of Hope, not really useful, so I didn't bother speccing into it because even at 250% of your weapon damage, most of our weapon damages, unless you get legendary, are only a few thousand at the most, so it's not really that helpful. So 0 of 5 on Beacon of Hope. Now, Purifying Fire is another key paragon ability. 5 of 5 on that one. Your at-will powers, which we're using, remember, to get Echoes of Light in the first place, your at-will powers apply Purifying Fire to foes. Purifying Fire stacks up to 5 times, dealing up to an additional 10% weapon damage each time a stack is applied. This damage is doubled for each stack applied to the target, and it lasts 60 seconds, but it's removed when you strike a target with an encounter power. Now with the encounter powers that we use, the only encounter power that removes Purifying Fire is Templar's Wrath. Binding Oath does not remove it, and Divine Touch does not remove it. It's weird the way that works. And of course, 1 point into Vengeful Judge. When you activate your Divine Call, which is your taunt, you apply Judge to yourself for 10 seconds. Judge increases damage dealt by 35%, as well as reducing the cooldown on your currently recharging powers by 35%. Your encounter powers have a chance to immediately grant you a charge of Divine Call. So basically, you always want to use at least one charge, one use of your Divine Call, your taunt. Perfect, gotta spec into that. Now this is where we get a little weird with our last 15 points and deviate from most other builds. I spec 3 of 5 into Prism. Activating a daily power causes you to become a Prism. At this, I have 3 points in it, so for 12 seconds. During this time, anytime you are healed, all allies within 30 feet of you are also healed for this amount. Now, you do lose your temporary hit points a lot, and you need to be healed, and you heal with Sanctuary quite a bit. So it's good to have, since we do pop our dailies quite frequently with that Divine Protector, especially if we have a Haste Cleric. Last remaining 12 points, we move down into the Light Paragon. I know some of you are thinking we should go with the Bulwark Paragon, but the Bulwark Paragon isn't really that great, and it only allows us to take a little bit more damage, so forget it. We do 5 of 5 in Gifts of Light, which is where you heal for up to 10% more. Our main heal comes from Sanctuary, so this boosts my heal from Sanctuary from about 900 per tick to roughly about 1,010, 1,020 per tick. That's not a huge boost, but it is decent. Then we go down to Warrior's Bastion. You gain an additional 10% more defense from equipment. That's pretty good. It allows us to use equipment that isn't spec'd specifically for defense, so we can spec for offense instead of defense, and we still top out our max defense that we need. So 5 of 5 on that. And where you'll see most builds go is they go 5 of 5 in Aura Gifts. Now the problem with Aura Gifts, there's actually 2 negatives to it. One, allies have to stand within 30 feet of you for 6 seconds before they get this buff. And if they move away from you out of that 30-foot range, the buff goes away almost instantly, and then they have to stand within 30 feet of you for another 6 seconds. It also does not stack if you have multiple paladins using it. So I only put 2 points in there for basically when I'm the only paladin running around. I grant all allies within 30 feet of me that are standing within 30 feet of me for 6 seconds 10% of my maximum power. I have about 8,000 power on this character, so that would be an additional 400, well, actually, sorry about that, 400 if there's 1 point, 800 if there's 2 points in it, power to all of your teammates. And that's how I spec it. Now, as far as stats, you're mainly going to focus on, because most of our damage comes from Binding Oath, and the damage from Binding Oath is not affected by any debuff on enemies or damage buff on you. It's not affected by your power. It's only affected by your armor pen. So the first stat that we're going for, and we're always going to focus on, is HP. The more HP we have, the better. Our second stat is going to be armor pen, to the point you get it to 60% resistance ignored, because 60% resistance is the most resistance that any boss currently has. It's going to take you a little while to get there because most of our gear doesn't have armor pen on it. Next, we're going to go for power, because the more power we have, the more damage we do, and the more healing we do with Sanctuary, as well as with Aura Gifts, the more power we grant to our teammates. After that, we're actually going to go for recovery, which recovery is kind of hard to get with the gear that we're using, so you have to spec with gems for it. But the reason why you want recovery is faster action point gain, means more dailies, and faster recharge speed, which means you can use your encounter powers quicker. Then critical strike, because again, if you hit a critical with Templar's Wrath, you get more temporary hit points. Defense, you want no more than 9,000. As you can see, I already have 7,400. The reason why you don't want more than 9,000 is if you get more than 9,000, you start to take less damage, and you don't take enough damage, because where our damage comes from is actually taking damage. Same thing with deflect. Deflect isn't really that useful because it's only a chance, and basically the most useful thing that deflect would be is deflecting Binding Oath when it breaks. Lifesteal, you're going to have a little bit of lifesteal from your gear. Do not spec into it. Take regeneration instead, because as paladins, which are basically tanks, we already have very high regeneration to begin with. So you can regenerate 4,000, 5,000 hit points per second out of combat, whereas any other character can only regen with the same amount of health, maybe 1,000 hit points per second out of combat. So that's where most of our healing ourselves is going to come in from. Combat advantage bonus is pretty okay. It's not super important, but it is nice to have, so you can get that with your artifacts and then go from there. Now, on gear, like I said, you want to focus on gear that is hit points, armor pen, critical chance, defense, and recovery. But that's not going to be the, you're not going to get that on every piece of gear. It just doesn't work out that way. So the gear that you want to get, like I have the Elemental Alliance Ward helmet. I also have the Elemental Alliance Ward Curseus, which gives you the majority of your hit points. There's another 18,000 hit points in there. So look at that and just upgrade your gear as you go until you get the Elven Assault gear. And with your shirt and pants, you can basically use your ones that you get through the quest line until you have enough money to buy the Gemmed Elemental Exquisite Warriors set, which that's going to be your end game level 70 armor as far as your shirt and pants goes. Now we're going to look at our weapon enchantment and armor enchantment. The armor enchantment that I use, most paladins don't use. They usually use negation, or they use something along the lines of Soul Forge, because if you die you can be revived, but most of the time we're not going to die. And negation just means that we take less damage, which we take less damage, we deal less damage. So kind of defeats the point of being a retribution build. The enchantment that I use is the Briar Twine enchantment. You reflect 2% of the damage dealt to you back to your attacker. Now the way this works is it does not reduce the damage that you take. You still take the full amount of damage, you just reflect 2% of what you take towards your enemy. Now, it seems to only reflect towards enemies that are within 15 feet of you. If they're farther than 15 feet away from you, the damage will not reflect back to them, but it allows us to double dip. When you take damage with Binding Oath, during the time you take damage, the damage numbers still show up on your screen as red numbers. You still take the damage. So Briar Twine reflects that damage back to the enemies that dealt it to you. And when Binding Oath breaks and you take that hit for however much damage, the Briar Twine enchantment will reflect a portion of that damage back to the enemy as well. So you get to double dip with that enchantment. I'm not entirely sure if they intended it that way and if they're going to patch it out or not, but for now, it really works well. Now, as far as a weapon enchantment, you have a couple different things that you can go with. I went with the Plague Fire enchantment because Plague Fires do stack, and a basic Plague Fire, you deal an additional 8% of your weapon damage as fire damage with your powers. Additionally, you burn your foe for 2% of your weapon damage as fire damage every second for 3 seconds, and you induce terror into your foe, reducing their defense by 5%, and the effect stacks up to 3 times. Now, it does stack with multiple people using Plague Fire. It also stacks with the Terror enchantment, which is what you'll see recommended as a weapon enchantment for pretty much all paladins, except for the fact that 2 Terror enchantments do not stack on each other. So if you have 2 paladins running Terror, it doesn't matter. So if you'll see 2 Terror enchantments, don't use them. I recommend using the Plague Fire over the Terror. Now, as far as artifacts, again, artifacts, your primary one, I don't have my 4th one yet because this is a newer character and was my alt, but is quickly becoming a main that I play. Your primary artifact is going to be the Sigil of the Devoted. The reason why that is it's an extremely good artifact, and it allows you to basically get your action points back. So when you use it, you get 100% of your action points back over 15 seconds, and in addition to that, while the buff is active, you heal yourself for 2,782 whenever you use an encounter power. That's at Legendary, and it has a 120-second cooldown time on it. Now, it does grant you as an equip bonus 500 power, which we need power, 500 defense, we need defense, and 450 incoming healing bonus. Now, that's not super important, but it is nice when your HP is drained from a very heavy hit from Binding Oath and a cleric heals you or you heal yourself. This is the first artifact that you want to get to Mythic. When you get it to Mythic, its stats remain almost the same. Its equip bonus doubles so that you get 1,000 power, 1,000 defense, and 600 incoming healing bonus. You still get 100% of your action points over 15 seconds, and you heal yourself for 3,243 whenever you use an encounter power. But the recharge time is reduced to only 60 seconds. So basically, you can pop your artifact once a minute. You almost don't even need a haste cleric once you get that to Mythic. Now, the other artifact, your secondary artifact, and the second one that you want to level up to Mythic is going to be the Lantern of Revelation. This should be the artifact that you get free when you first make your character. And the thing about it is we're never going to use it, basically, once you get your Sigil of the Devoted, but you want it for its equip bonus. It's Critical Strike, Armor Pen, and Combat Advantage. Now, Critical Strike is very important, Armor Penetration is very important, Combat Advantage is nice, but not that great. Thing about it is, when you get it up to Mythic, you get 1,000 Critical Strike and 1,000 Armor Penetration. At Legendary, it's 500 Critical Strike, 500 Armor Penetration, and 450 Combat Advantage bonus. Now, if you have a Paladin at 70, you've obviously run through the Vault of the Nine quest. So as a third artifact, for temporary use, you could say, until you get one that's better, since they're free, is your Sigil of the Oathbound Paladin. Now, at Epic, you get a 1,240 maximum hit points, 190 power, and 100 AoE resist. So AoE resist allows you to take less damage, power is great, and the hit points is good. It's not going to be one of your final 4 artifacts, but it's a good temporary artifact. Your fourth artifact is going to be part of whatever set you decide to run. In this case, I'm going to end up running the Lostmouth set. So I already have Lostmouth's horn, I just need to get the belt and the neck. And the reason that we want to run that horn is because it grants you armor pen, among other things, as well as the set bonus is you do an additional hit for your weapon damage every time you do a critical hit. So that's pretty cool, and of course you want to get that horn up to, as soon as possible, epic or legendary. I just don't have the refinement points to do it before I did the video, but you can see that you also gain power from it when you get it up to rare. So it's a really good artifact to have for paladins. Very helpful. Now, you go into companions. It doesn't really matter what you pick for companions at the moment. I didn't have the money for really good companions, so I just have my basic healer that you get for free and my rogue illusionist that you get for free. But the two companions that you're going to have summoned, your choice. The best one is the cat. You buy it from the Wondrous Bazaar. It's 800,000 diamonds, though. They did fix the whole thing where the cat would die. Now it's an augmentation companion, and it will not die, just like an Ion Stone. But in Ion Stone, you can get for about 100,000. And I like the Ion Stone that I have, which I went with the Ion Stone of Might. And the reason why I went with that is because its active bonus is 2% stamina regen, so you regenerate your stamina quicker. And being that it is a augmentation companion, it just floats around your head, and you get 100% of its stats. So I used 3 Eldritch Runestones for now, and then the Alliance Assault Ring, 2 Alliance Assault Rings, and an Alliance Assault Belt, and each one of these rings and the belt has a Draconic rank 7 enchantment in it. So this is just kind of crappy gear. You'll upgrade your Ion Stone after you get all your gear for your character, because Ion Stones are not used in PvP. But as you can see, my Ion Stone is giving me 140 deflect, 423 recovery, 890 armor pen, 990 critical strike, and 998 power. And all those stats are granted 100% right to my character. So that's what allows you to do as much damage as we do. Like I said at the end of this video, I'll leave that little game clip for you. I do need to buy a mount, which the best mount, I'll go ahead and show you. I don't have the diamonds for it yet. I wish I did. But yeah, maybe one of these days, is going to be the new mount that just came out, which is the snail mount. And you want the legendary one, but sadly they're like 2 million diamonds. And the reason for that is it's 140% speed boost. When you can summon it in combat, it's not that great. It only does like 7,000 damage. But the main thing is, when you use your daily power, you get 25% of your total action points back over 10 seconds. So every time you use your daily, you get action points back. It's awesome. But sadly, it's expensive. So that will be something that I get later on. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, make sure that you leave a comment. Otherwise, go ahead, smash the like button. Remember to subscribe for more content, and I will see you in another video. I will do an update after this video when I get all my boons unlocked. This way you can see them all, because boons I didn't go over due to the fact that I don't really have them all unlocked yet. I'm working on them. I only have the Dread Ring partially done, Icewind Dale and Tyranny of Dragons partially done. So I will do another video when I have all the boons that explains the boons, which will allow your character to do even more damage. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Alright guys, just wanted to let you know, I do apologize. At the beginning of the video I said this game clip would be of a complete straight run through, but when I did it, we did have 2 retries on the Scorpions because the teammates that I played with had low defense. So other than that, it was a complete one try for Lostmouth, and hopefully you enjoy.